Katie, can you take the roll then?
Yes, I will take the roll. Okay, Karina Bowler. You know Karina was on.
Oh, I'm here. Okay. Sorry.
No problem. Bruce Brunner.
Here.
Joey Dobson. All right, Joey seems to be having technical difficulty, so hopefully she will be back. Colleen Ebinger.
Here.
Chloe Jackson. Walensky J. Cox.
Here.
Queen Kimmons. Charlotte Kinsley.
Here.
Liliana Latron Garcia. Brenda Marcos. David McGee. Lisa Mears. Melissa Newman. Colleen O'Connor Toberman.
Here.
Maggie Addy.
Here.
Scott Schaefer.
Here.
Ian Seja.
Here.
Cecil Smith.
Here.
Rose Ting.
Here? Was that me?
Thanks, Rose. Annie Wells.
Here.
All right, we do have a quorum. So Colleen.
So next would be
Sorry.
so next would be to approve the minutes from our last meeting. Katie, would you mind taking a vote on that?
Yes, actually, it's adoption of the agenda is the next one. So this is to adopt the agenda. Karina Bowler.
Yes.
Brunner.
Yes.
Joey Dobson.
Yes.
Colleen Ebinger.
Yes.
Chloe Jackson. Walensky J. Cox.
Yes.
Queen Kimmons. Charlotte Kinsley.
Yes.
Brenda Marcos. Is Brenda on yet? Not yet. David McGee. Lisa Mears. Melissa Newman. Colleen O'Connor Toberman.
Yes.
Maggie Addy.
Yes.
Scott Schaefer.
Yes.
Janine Seja.
Yes.
Cecil Smith.
Yes.
Rose Tang.
Yes.
Annie Wells.
Yes.
All right. 13 ayes. So the agenda is adopted. And so.
All right, thanks. And I'm really sorry. Apparently, Teams is crashing on my computer, so I'm using my phone for Teams. So Katie, if you can help out with like the chat and stuff, I'm not going to be able to monitor that. So at this point, do we have a motion to adopt the minutes from our April meeting?
I think that's what we just did, right?
Yeah, I think it warmed up.
I think
We
we
just
officially just adopted today's agenda.
I move that we accept the minutes.
Thanks, Janine. Any second?
Bruce seconds.
All right, thanks, Katie, if you can take the roll.
Yes. All right. Karina Bowler.
Yes.
Bruce Brunner.
Yes.
Joey Dobson.
Yes.
Colleen Ebinger.
Yes.
Chloe Jackson. Walensky J. Cox.
Yes.
Queen Kimmons. Charlotte Kinsley.
Yes.
Brenda Marcos. Is Brenda on yet? She's having some trouble joining.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I couldn't figure out what password she's trying. I sent her one that I thought might work, so.
Okay. David McGee. Lisa Mears. Here.
Okay.
Oh, hi, Lisa. We're voting on adopting the minutes.
Approved.
Okay. Melissa Newman. Colleen O'Connor Toberman. Colleen.
Yes, I'm having computer problems, but yes.
Okay, so everyone's having issues here. Maggie Addy.
Yes.
Scott.
Yes.
Janine Seja.
Yes.
Cecil Smith.
Yes.
Rose Tang.
Yes.
Annie Wells.
Yes.
All right, there are 14 yeses, so the minutes are adopted.
All right. Thanks, Katie and everybody. Good to see you all or hear your voices. Next on our agenda is our committee's public comment opportunity. As you all know, we make time, we set aside 10 minutes on each of our agendas to hear public comments from non-committee members. So we ask that if anyone's here to make a comment, that you keep your comment to 1 minute and share your comment related to housing issues in the city of Minneapolis. We'll follow up with anyone who is here to share a public comment as needed. So if anyone is present here today to make a public comment, you can unmute yourself now by pressing *6 and state your name, and then we'll call on individuals to make their comment. So is anyone here on the phone to make a comment? Unmute by pushing *6. I'm not hearing anyone right now. If you're here to make a public comment, please push *6 and let us know your name. I'm still not hearing anyone. So one final chance. If you're here to make a public comment, please unmute at this time by pressing *6 and state your name. All right, I am not hearing any unless Katie, I missed anybody that you heard.
No, I did not hear anyone.
Okay. All right, so at this time, we'll move on to the next part of our agenda, which is updates on housing initiatives in the city. I don't know, Katie, do you want to start this off? I'm not sure if it's going to be Katie or Robin for the first part.
Yep, I can get us started. So we wanted to follow up at the April meeting. You received a presentation about the city's Affordable Housing Trust Fund and Qualified Allocation Plan. So we just wanted to share the timeline on that process. So that has been open for public comment. It is going to be brought to the city's Business Inspections, Housing and Zoning Committee on May 18th for approval, the proposed changes to the program. And then at that point, staff will issue, once it's received council approval, will issue the request for proposal. That's slated to be issued in June. So that at that point, interested applicants and developers can apply for that funding. And then the selections, the applications are due later in the summer, and then the selections come to the city council at the end of the year. So that's the update. So if you were interested in kind of seeing that next step and if the council adopts some of those changes that were presented at our meeting in April, then you could watch that May 18th BIZ committee meeting. So any questions on that before we move on? Okay,
I just
so,
want to say hello. This is Queen. That's
oh,
all.
hi, Queen. Glad you're here.
Finally got on.
Good. So the next update, I just wanted to
I'm
share,
here.
related to the eviction moratorium.
Brenda is here.
I'm sorry, what was that?
No, I can't get his number.
Oh, just gonna
I didn't ask her.
mute.
Brenda was saying that she's on the call now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
because
for some reason I couldn't do the video because he kept asking for a password.
Got it. Okay. I don't know why that is, but glad you're here. So the eviction moratorium, some of you may have seen the news yesterday that there was and Joey maybe can elaborate on this more when I'm done, but there was a decision in federal court to pause the federal eviction moratorium that is being appealed by the U.S. Department of Justice. The state's eviction moratorium is still in effect. So Minnesota's eviction moratorium is in effect. The governor is making decisions about the peacetime emergency powers. He made some announcements about those today, but there is discussion happening at the legislature currently about a possible ramp down from the eviction moratorium. And so those conversations are ongoing, but currently the state's eviction moratorium is in effect. And so I know Joey and Cecil and others on the committee are probably heavily involved in some of those conversations. So if you have anything else, and this is meant to be a short update section, but anything else to add to that, feel free to do so.
This is Queen. I'd like to add that myself and I believe it was Legal Aid, we had a eviction forum, and we will have another, and I will let this group know, or someone from this group that works with Legal Aid will let us know how we can join in. Thank you.
Thank you, Queen.
Katie,
Yes.
just on that, so the eviction moratorium and lease termination moratorium off-ramp proposals are before the House Omnibus Conference Committee, the House Omnibus Bill Conference Committee. So those discussions, they started on Monday. They had a preview of the bill, but they still haven't figured out the targets, and so the conference committee hasn't since. But that's what the discussion is at.
Thank you, Cecil. That is a helpful update. Okay, the next item in our update section is rent stabilization. And Robin, do you have any updates you want to provide related to that? I'm not sure that much has changed since last month. I think things are still kind of in the same place they were, but if you have anything you want to share.
Yes, I'd be happy to. So the public hearing has been set for May 18th. And there is language that folks can see. I will put it in the chat for everybody who can use the chat. Oh, you know what? It's telling me that the chat is muted, so I can't put it in there. Yeah, there is. Oh, look at that, freed up for me. So there's the language of the proposed ordinance, and the meeting is at 1:30 on May 18th at the Business Inspection, Housing and Zoning Committee of the Minneapolis City Council.
Sorry to interrupt, Robin. I think
Yeah.
We are definitely going to be talking a lot more about notice. I think Katie was maybe asking if you had any updates on rent stabilization for now.
On rent stabilization. I'm sorry.
Did I miss that, Katie?
Yeah, no, you're right. Yeah, you're right. I was asking about rent stabilization. Sorry, Robin. I just
heard you say a completely different thing. So no, I don't think that there's any big update. So the only thing that has really happened is that the Charter Commission identified a couple of things that I would put in the category of like technical amendments that need to happen to the charter amendments that were sent forward by the council. And we have worked with the attorney's office and the charter commission members. Helpfully, one of them was a member of the city attorney's office before he retired, Peter Ginder. So there's been some back and forth between the charter commission and the city attorney's office to just sort of get those technical amendments made. I expect that it is going to be sent back maybe even a little bit before the 150 days that the charter commission has to consider those amendments. But we'll know when we know. I don't think that there's anything that anybody can say that's like definitive about that timeline. They have until, I believe, the end of July to get it back to the council.
Thanks, Robin. So yes, and then we are going to be talking more about the renter eviction protection ordinance later in the meeting, which is what Robin was talking about. So we'll get to that. That's our last agenda item. And our next agenda item is emergency rental assistance. So we don't have updates on that in this section. So those are the updates I had. I don't know if anyone else has anything they want to raise in this section briefly before we move on. I defer to the chairs, I guess, on on anything else.
Katie, there's a lot of background noise. I don't know who's the admin of this, but if someone could maybe do some muting, that'd be really helpful.
Yes, we can do that. Thanks.
Yeah, so just to kind of reiterate what, oh, go ahead.
Oh, sorry, I was just going to say, I'm just going to go ahead and mute everyone. And then if you need to speak, just unmute yourself. So that's probably the easiest thing to do. Okay. All right. Go ahead, Joey.
Yeah, I was just going to reiterate, I think since we didn't have public comment and things, we freed up a few minutes of our time. We do want to spend, our plan is to spend about half an hour talking about rent assistance and then our final hour on the eviction protection ordinance. But if anyone has anything now, I think we could spend a couple minutes if anyone has other issues they want to make sure to raise, updates related to housing in the city, or want to ask any questions about future agenda topics. Feel free to do so now since we have a few minutes.
Hi, this is Queen again. I would like to raise a topic about these encampments that are bulldozed over. And so I, and then I see other outreach staff raising money for blankets and to repair tarps and tents. And I think that, with the housing shortage and evictions coming, and people already starting to live back outside, I would be just interested in what kind of impact is that going to have on us as we start to look, as things start to develop with people living outside. Basically, will this body be impacted by that?
Thanks, Queen. I know in some of our kind of planning meetings, this topic has come up. And so at our next one, let's talk about maybe from city staff might have some ideas about, letting us know what specifically the cities has in the works for encampments, especially as you mentioned, as the weather gets warmer. So I'll make a note to put that on our planning meeting for our next planning meeting as leadership. Thank you.
Hi, this is Karina. I want to speak on some things. I would like to put this on record that we need to talk more about Tenant Data Privacy Act. And it's something that I'm hearing on some calls that I'm on. And that is pertaining to property owners collecting data on tenants without their permission and using it in ways that tenants don't have the consent or understand what it's being used for, and making sure that the courts are aware of it as well, making sure that tenants give them the right to do it. So that's something that's coming up a lot on the calls that I'm on, is about Tenant Data Privacy Act. And another thing is to consider having legislation to start a right to counsel law to protect renters in court, especially for renters who don't know their rights, and creating some sort of tenant political action committee. And that's just keeping tabs on, you know, a lot of the things that's happening in the city regarding fair housing, making sure that NAACP, someone in housing, is involved with all these housing issues that's going on, and someone within the city rights, civil rights department as well that deals with housing. So we need to make sure that we have a lot of right people on these committee and boards, because we have a lot of landlords and people that's profiting off these committees. So we need to make sure that we're protecting housing and keeping people housed and protecting those who don't know that they have rights.
Thanks, Karina. You brought up a lot of really important issues. A couple of things that I'll maybe lift up out of there from the kind of from the city perspective. One is, you mentioned, you know, legislation around right to counsel. I do know that we'll be considering, or the plan would be for this committee to weigh in on the city's budget, and that's one place where right to counsel can be considered. Is at least there are some contracts, you know, full disclosure, Legal Aid has a contract with Minneapolis to provide representation to some renters in eviction cases. I would just say that's one way that we could weigh in on that from a city funding perspective. And I know we'll be tracking the budget once the mayor's proposed budget comes out. That's, I think, August, usually, if I'm not mistaken. I see Rose nodding her head. Thank you, resident budget expert, Rose. One of them anyway. So that'd be one kind of way that I think we could address that, would be through our budget, comments on the budget. Then you also mentioned kind of civil rights and housing, and that I think brings up a really, an area that we haven't talked about in my recollection on this committee, is the city's Department of Civil Rights and what the work that they do around housing. So maybe that'll be another thing that I'll put on my list to discuss in our upcoming planning meeting. Because I do think that that's a piece that we haven't touched on as a committee directly, at least, or heard from city staff on. So I'm making notes of that, and others, Katie and others, can help make sure that we get those topics addressed. So thank you.
You're welcome.
I actually have a question that's somewhat related, but I would be curious to hear more about how the city is spending the federal money received on housing outside of emergency assistance, whether that's these tenant protections or other ways that the city is using that federal funding on housing.
And just a real quick note on that, Maggie, I'm not sure if you're referring to the money from the American Rescue Plan. So we are still waiting on federal guidance for that money. We expect to get it next week, and then anticipate that there will be sort of some funding that goes out in likely June, and then probably another round of that funding that goes out later in the year. We fully anticipate that there will be a significant amount of money used for housing and homelessness response based on the mayor and council's priorities. So that I think June could be a potentially a good time to provide an update on that, or maybe even June or July, I think will be a good time to provide an update on that funding.
Thanks.
I had one piece I was interested in knowing as we talk about housing. I'd like to know, I get notifications sometimes from the city when I apply for things that wait times for city staff to get back on issues or permits or a lot of different things has been extended because they've furloughed or have reduced staff. So I'm interested to know, have we reduced staff in inspections? Have we reduced staff in city planning, which allows more housing to be built? And what's going on in that arena?
So I can answer this one. So yes, the city last year went through a fairly significant hiring freeze, along with some budget cuts that did reduce staffing in inspections and CPED and other areas. We are starting to staff back up now slowly, as the budget permits. But yes, we did see some reduction. Although, at least for inspections, if you're calling 311 and we are able to get out to people pretty quickly, either in person or with a virtual call inspection. So we're making that response to complaint a priority.
Yeah, I just saw one yesterday on permits, and I went through a full permitting of building more housing, and it took, the hoops were just unbelievable because people would send stuff back without even looking at anything, and then they get another 2 weeks to answer. Well, that's on page 5. You didn't even look.
Yeah.
So it took time after time, and just tell us, listen, we're so far behind, rather than, it costs a lot of money for me to have my architect,
Yeah, absolutely, Bruce. And I'm not really sure where we're at with CPED and their permit and permit staff, but I'd certainly be willing to check in on that and see what's going on with CPED permitting teams. So
Yeah.
Code Construction Services.
Yeah, it's appreciative when they just tell us, listen, we are having, just so we have an expectation. So thank you.
I'll just add too, in terms of the staffing, and is very related to the budget process. And so just for the committee to note that as you dig into the budget this year, there will be information on the increased staffing levels based on, last year talked a couple times about there was the cut budget, and then there was for 2020, and then there's the 2021 budget. And I think mostly this committee generally focuses on sort of the housing programs, but if you're interested in hearing sort of an update on some more generic staffing levels or department specific staffing levels, we could include that information as well.
Thanks, Andrea. That's super helpful. I'm sure we'll be in touch before the next meeting where we talk about the budget. I think it's helpful. Thanks everyone for contributing. It's really helpful for us, guiding the agendas on this to at least periodically kind of put the call out for what folks want to make sure we spend our time on, to make sure that it's what you all want to be talking about. So obviously always open door, email us, reach out to us if there's ever a topic that you think we're missing or something that you want to make sure gets some time on the agenda. Don't hesitate. All right, so I think time to move on to our next topic. And it just kind of came up a little bit with the funding, but Rent Help Minnesota, the current wave of COVID-related emergency rental assistance is open and has been for a few weeks. We sent out, or staff sent out the opportunity for folks to send in any feedback that they have, if they've either experienced directly or worked with others who have attempted to or successfully accessed the Rent Help MN system. Thanks to Maggie and Cecil for submitting comments. I think Tina and Katie circulated a Word document that you all should have access to a little bit before the meeting. So those comments, along with some from legal aid, are in that document. So we did want to set aside a decent amount of time for this conversation. I'm hoping maybe Katie, can you give just a little bit of a recap for folks where we're at with the program, what we know about how it's working so far, kind of data wise, and then maybe we can share, then give people an opportunity to share any additional feedback, if that's okay.
Sure. Yep, I can share. I did share my screen. Can you see that with the document that was sent around? And for those who are on the phone, from the public, I think if we didn't get it up on the agenda, we will, but we can talk about what it says. But just in terms of an update, so yes, you're right. The Rent Help MN is the statewide website that is, and it's a centralized application. The jurisdictions that received a direct allocation of funding have collaborated with the state. The state led the development of the website and the application, and we're all using that as the centralized application portal for the way for people to apply. So that somebody doesn't need to know if they're applying to like Minneapolis's pot of funds or the state's pot of funds. If they live in Minneapolis, they can just apply through Rent Help MN, and then we're kind of sorting that out behind the scenes. Minneapolis has hired processors to process applications for Minneapolis funds. Those processors are Clues, New American Development Center, North Point Health and Wellness, Lutheran Social Service, and Minneapolis Public Housing Authority. The way it works sort of behind the scenes is that we can kind of turn our program, the Minneapolis part of the program, off and on to help manage the flow so that our processors can properly process the applications. We're kind of working through the system, and I think from the comments, so are a lot of people who are applying and engaging with the program, kind of still learning the system and working through it. But we have started taking and processing applications through our Minneapolis processors. The other thing I think I will mention here, and that there will be more to come, but we also are working with other partners from local jurisdictions who received direct allocations of funding on a way for landlords to apply more directly, and so that's work on that is going on, and we'll have more to share hopefully very soon on what that will look like. And then the state also contracted with field navigators who are able to assist people with applying. And so, the other piece I should mention is that 211 is open and available for people to call for assistance. It is, my understanding is 211 is assisting renters and not property owners who are calling for assistance. Right now, the way for property owners to get assistance is to email. I'd have to go back and look at what the email address is, but there's an email address specifically for property owners. But the state did hire some field navigators who can also assist with people who are applying. The city and Hennepin County jointly issued an RFP a few weeks ago as well to hire additional field navigators. We're in the process of getting contracts for those organizations. Again, the idea is that they can go out and do more direct assistance for people who are trying to apply for rent assistance. The last piece I should mention is that under the American Rescue Plan Act, there is additional money coming. We just this week heard from Treasury asking for us to elect whether we want to receive those funds. So we are doing that process. We don't yet know how much money it is that the city will be getting directly. We still haven't gotten that number. Our estimates, though, have been somewhere between $9 and $11 million. And then Andrea Inouye has been working pretty closely on this as well. So I might just pause and see if, Andrea, do you have anything to add to the overview?
Well, I put in the chat the email address that you were referring to, which is landlords@renthelpmn.org. So that is specifically for property owners who are need some assistance navigating the system. So that's there in the chat for you.
All right. So I think that's sort of the overview, Joy. I don't know if you had anything else you wanted to cover there or move into sort of comments that people.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, thanks. I think that's really helpful. Thanks, Katie and Andrea. So I think Maggie and Cecil and I all submitted some comments in writing that are in this document that Katie has shared now. I want to first see if anyone else wants to share any comments on any feedback on how the program is working based on either your own experience working with it, either for you personally or on behalf of someone else, or what you're hearing from folks you work with. The goal here is to generate this feedback and then decide whether as a group it's feedback that we want to share sort of formally or publicly with the city as they're contemplating how they deal with new money, how they process this program, anything that the city has control over, sooner in amending things about how the program is working now. As Katie said, some of it is determined by the state because the city is kind of working with the state's umbrella program using 211 and all of that. But to the extent that the city can either pass it on or do something about some of the concerns, we felt like, rent assistance and emergency assistance has come up time and time again in this space. And this, I think, is a good moment to provide the feedback that we all have. So do others, this is kind of open floor and we've got some time for this conversation. So if others who did not have a chance to submit something in writing, we'll open the floor for, kind of just sharing verbally any feedback you might have.
Hello, this is Queen. Real quickly, I think that what I would say, I kind of, agree somewhat with this document. One, it is the information has been put out there, but only a selective few people are able to process that information or get that information to them. I don't know what it's going to take for us to put this information out there so other people can start to buy in, alleviate a higher rate of people going through evictions. And so I would like to say that part. The other part is that I don't see, I've went through a bunch of portals and all that, and I still don't know how to access that document. And so that other people, that I know, the network of people that I know, that we could start having some conversation about that and just spread the word of mouth. But definitely, if there's like communities that we would like to put a little flyer together and have more information about that, I would love to see that kind of happen, where we could get more people to participate who are really struggling. And again, a lot of people, I hate to say this, but some individuals don't really learn by reading, they learn by pictures. And so it would be nice to do that. I'm over here in the Native American side of town right now, and I'm certain that people probably are aware, but for the people that need this resource the most are probably further from this information. So I would like to see how I can participate and help in doing that. I'm gonna recuse myself from that. Thank you.
Thanks, Queen. And maybe I can just comment on that briefly. We do have some materials. The state has put together different like messaging materials that I believe we could share with the committee. I'll double check on that, but I think we could share those for anybody who wants to help spread the word. And then the other piece I'll just add is that our processors have gone on, the city has cultural shows on the cultural radio stations. And so I know Clues went on the Spanish speaking show, and we've had others on some of our other cultural radio programs to spread the word. We may do that again as this continues, but appreciate Queen. I think that's right. We need to make sure the word is getting out to everybody as many ways as possible. So certainly happy to share materials with you if you are interested in spreading the word.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks, Queen, so much. I don't know, Katie, as you're going here, it might be hard for me to see your screen, but do you mind taking notes of what some of these additional comments are to add to this document?
Yes, I will do that.
Thanks. So yeah, Queen, what I'm hearing from you is a real need to make sure that the information is getting out to people, especially for people who, don't speak English, don't take in information verbally, by reading. I think that's really critically important. All right, I'm able to see hands. I'm sorry, I'm not catching what order, but I'm seeing Lisa, you have your hand up. If you can go ahead and share.
I actually just put my comments in the chat, and that is that at the Bridge for Youth, we have a supportive housing program where our youth pay rent, and our property manager is Common Bond. And we have had youth apply for support, and they're pending responses, and checking frequently, but haven't seen any updates as of a day or two ago when I inquired with staff.
Okay, thanks. That's really good to know how it's going for applicants. Any other comments from you, Lisa, about how it's going, or are you kind of just waiting to see how those applications get processed?
Yeah, we're on the really front end of it at the Bridge, so I'm happy to bring feedback forward when I receive it.
Sounds
Thank
good.
you.
Yeah, thank you, Lisa. Okay, Janine, I see your hand. I think you're still muted, sorry. Janine, I can't hear you. I don't know if I think you're still muted.
See if I can help here. I'm trying to. I'm not even seeing Janine's name in the participants right now. Oh, here we go. Here, let me try to unmute.
Okay.
If I can.
I don't know if she's monitoring the chat, if you can chat her. Janine,
Yeah.
can you hear us?
I'm not able to unmute her, it looks like. I can only.
Shoot.
Oh. Huh, weird. She's unmuted on her end, but she's showing up here as muted. That's strange. Well, Janine, I hate to ask. Oh, she's going to try to dial in. Okay. So we'll maybe come back to Janine, Joey.
Yeah, absolutely. Sorry. Okay. All right. I'm looking at my list. I'm not seeing other hands. But I could be.
Joey, I have a question, but I'll wait till you get the people that's on the line. Online.
You go ahead, Karina. I'm not seeing anyone with their hand up, so you go ahead.
Okay. So I'm kind of very concerned about tenants who are sacrificing everything to pay the rent, but some people are still getting evicted, even if they're getting the money to the landlord where they're requesting the rent relief. And some landlords are still finding like loopholes, just evicting them in general. So where is the protection for that as well? So the question will take me back to how much is rent relief really helping renters during this moratorium? If they're finding, still loopholes to evict them and not accepting the money.
Yeah, I would say, what I would just comment on from a court, if they're getting like filed on, like a court case is getting started against them and it's in Hennepin, I know our office is tracking those cases closely and screening for, you know, what's going on in the case. And the court does that to some extent too. If somebody right now files a case that's just about rent, the court will let them know that that's not allowed right now. But I hear what you're saying is they're not necessarily making it about rent. They're finding another reason to maybe either bring an eviction action or terminate their lease or asking them to leave.
Yeah. Because I mean, the moratorium ends June 30th. And then, so what would be the plan to, you know, help protect those renters that is facing those cost burdens of, you know, losing their jobs because of the shutdown, but they, you know, still trying to figure out, you know, unemployment or whatever their income is, or are still looking for a job. They'll still be possibly tossed on the street, you know, with adding more people to the street. So I'm just trying to find some real solutions of how we can protect housing in general and not just, you know, continue with a bunch of lip service. Because it's a lot that's going on. And it's just seeming like it's just a bunch of solutions on paper to make most people look like they're doing the work. But it's more people on the streets, you know, because of all of this stuff. So we gotta find some real concrete solutions to help the renters and, you know, protect, you know, those landlords who are helping their rent, you know, their tenants as well. I'm not going to look for that too, but it just seems like it's just so many loopholes. There's an article right now in New Jersey where a landlord was literally filing income for rental assistance on tenants who haven't even lived in their property for 5 years. And it's going through and he got the money and then he ended up getting caught. So it's just too many loopholes, but these renters are suffering at the hands of this pandemic and they end up tossed on the street with their children. So I don't know. It just seems like it's too much lip service. And Joey, I will add to that. I did see your comments to that. People are being asked to, you know, give too many documentations that's not needed for what they're asking, like personal documentation, like child court order, income type stuff. So I don't know what that's all about.
Yeah, so I'm hearing, you know, a few critical pieces of feedback maybe we can add from your perspective about making sure that the city is exploring other, you know, housing stability measures in addition to rent being one. Another, making sure that and Katie mentioned that they're working on a direct landlord or property owner application process, making sure that there are kind of things in place to make sure that the money is going where it should go, right? That property owners aren't collecting money, you know, for a unit where they shouldn't. Those are a few things that I'm hearing. And then you also sharing the concern about burdensome documentation requirements. I guess those are kind of maybe what I'm hearing from you.
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks for sharing. Okay. Do you know, Janine, do we have you back? Are you here via phone or can you hear us now? You still look muted to me on your box.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, great. I'm so sorry. I don't know what's going on, but we couldn't hear you earlier.
Yeah, that's okay. I seem to, with this particular meeting, I seem to have an issue where I'm unmuted. I appear to be unmuted on my end, but nothing allows me to fully unmute. So I'm dialed in and I put my feedback in the chat, but just, you know, briefly, I haven't interacted with the system except to go in and just look at what the process would be like for someone applying, and then reading kind of the commentary in the document when we started the section. It feels like there should be some recourse to go back to whoever's created the website to make some adjustments, some enhancements to make it easier. You know, it feels like having it available on mobile, being able to more easily upload documents. You know, there just seem to be some usability issues that are creating friction that could be fairly easily addressed. It's a pretty busy website with a lot to read. So that's my 2 cents.
Great, thanks. Thanks, Janine. Let's see, Cecil.
So I want to elevate the conversation a little bit here from just this kind of critique. I actually think we have a crisis on our hands, and I'm not an alarmist person, but I am not aware, and I have surveyed our industry, and we did a quick survey of over 100 property management companies. I'm not aware of a single completed application in the state of Minnesota. We're 2 weeks into this with hundreds of millions of dollars, and this is not being processed. I have had many property management companies say, when it comes to the part of the process where the landlords have to verify and approve, the system locks up. And Maggie has, in her comments, confirmed what is a very typical occurrence. The system just locks up. And so there's some technical issues, and then it's great that you put the email address, but there is no response to that email address. And people call 211 and they log a ticket. It's a technical ticket that the landlords can log with 211, and they're being told 3 weeks, up to 3 weeks before you'll get a response. Just on your technical ticket, not just to complete the application, just to address the issue that you're raising. So we, as the industry, are very upset. We have been sounding alarm bells about this for about 3 weeks. Once we learned some of the details, even before it launched 2 weeks ago, and something has to be done. We can't fix it. We're consumers like renters, and we can't fix this. And we have property taxes due on May 15th, and we are now starting to have owners having to do capital calls. Managers do capital calls in order to meet property taxes, because there is not sufficient cash available to pay the property taxes. And so this is going to be potentially a spiraling crisis. Now, clearly they want to pay their property taxes. They don't want to be delinquent, which is why they're doing the capital calls. But that should not be necessary when we have $500 million of rental assistance. And we're one of the last states to launch our program, and it doesn't work. So I just think we need to take this conversation from kind of this talking around the edges of that we actually have a system failure on our hands right now. I'm very pleased to hear that the city of Minneapolis is thinking about directing some of their assistance towards to an alternative program, alternative processing with direct landlord assistance, because we've got to get some of this money out, and it is not working through Rent Help MN. And it can't just be owners and managers that raise the alarm. I think renters need to raise the alarm. And when renters are saying, well, why isn't my landlord approving my application? Well, we're just getting the spinning wheel, folks. That's what we get on our screen. And we had managers call their teams in over the weekend, even on Sunday, to work on processing this, thinking, well, maybe the system is overloaded. They got the spinning wheel all day Sunday. So I think it is a crisis. It's unfortunate. And we need a fix, and we need answers. We need a plan. And I think we need to send that message and ask those questions, and be asking our elected representatives in the city council to be asking those questions. I've met with legislators to have them ask those questions, because they have oversight. But we have customers who are fretting now about, will I ever get rental assistance? And so how do we, our committee has to decide how we're going to address this, but I just want to raise the level of concern to a higher level. It sounded like we were at at a 6 or a 7, and I want to take it to a 9 or a 10 here because I think it's that serious.
See, so I second what you said. It is a crisis. And I said in the beginning of our first term that we need to call a state of emergency for housing because we've gotten here where we got too many cooks in the kitchen getting out paperwork to help people get their bills paid. And I think Minnesota need a state of emergency for housing so that we can concrete a real plan to help renters. Like you said, property owners that are paying taxes, because they don't pay the taxes and they lose the property, then we still on the street. So Minnesota need a state of emergency for housing. This is serious, and it's people. A lot of people are affected by this.
Thanks. Yeah, thanks, Cecil and Kreener too for all of that. I think, you know, the comments that I submitted and for legal aid were about some specific pieces, but I think add up to, you know, we don't see the system working in a way that is preserving housing stability for our clients right now, at least. So I think I do want to get to kind of a decision. If we can talk about what do we want to do? Like you're kind of getting to, Cecil, what do we as a committee want to say, knowing that it's our job to advise the city, not the state of Minnesota. It's our job to advise city council and the mayor's office and staff kind of indirectly, I think, and share I think it's completely appropriate for us to share our feedback with the city about what we're seeing and what our concerns are. So I'm hearing, you know, from the people who have shared these concerns. I want to make sure, I don't know, if there's anybody who has a vastly different opinion, I would really hope you would share that now, because I want to make sure that we're not glossing over anyone's opinions. But it sounds to me like, absent that, we could submit, you know, these comments in writing with sort of a general statement at the beginning saying, so far from what we're seeing, this program is not working effectively for renters trying to apply for assistance, nor for property owners who need that assistance as well. So I don't know, you know, if Katie, you have guidance or others have guidance, but sorry, looking for hands. Bruce, if you want to chime in, but I'll give you just a second here, Bruce, and then I'll pass it over to you. What I'm thinking is, if we can vote, I think what we would need to do ultimately is to vote as a committee on submitting something. And hopefully we could do that now or do that today rather than waiting another month. All right, Bruce, I think I see your hand. Go ahead.
Andrea, can you get a meeting with the mayor and bring this up?
Hi there. Yeah, so I am updating the mayor on the progress on this. He is aware that there are technical issues that are still needed to be addressed with the system. I think this feedback today has been really helpful to I think as Cecil put it well, raise it sort of from a 6 to a 9. You know, just getting that kind of feedback that that the smaller tweaks, that this is a larger tweak that is necessary. And myself personally and Katie are in you know, regular communication with the folks at the state who are working on this. So this is definitely alarms that we will continue to raise as well. But yes, I will be updating the mayor on the severity of this and we need our processors in Minneapolis can only work as fast as the system. If it's not allowing this piece with the landlords to approve that, that's a really big deal that we need to get fixed right away. Yes, this is something we will be raising the alarm bells on.
I mean, like, have the mayor call the governor. I mean, I think Cecil brings a good point. This is a crisis. I mean, we don't blame the city processors or what the city's doing. I think you guys are doing great, right? But you're limited to only what the state allows. So, thank you.
All right, so for our next step, and Katie, do you think it makes sense for us to take a vote on whether we want to kind of more formally submit this feedback to, I'm not entirely sure who all the audience would be, but to whoever makes sense.
Yeah, yes, I mean, I think whether you take a vote on this or not, we will, as Andrea said, like on a staff to staff level, I will certainly be sharing this with the people we're communicating with at the state. And you know, Andrea mentioned she would be discussing with the mayor. I think if you, you know, you could certainly vote to, you know, sort of put this into a memo to send to mayor, staff, however you wanted to do it. But I think regardless of whether the committee, I mean, I think even just getting this feedback and having this conversation gives us a lot that we can follow up on as well. So I would say, you know, it's obviously up to the committee whether you want to take a vote on creating a letter or a memo of some kind to officially send to city leadership, or otherwise I can tell you that we will also, you know, be passing these comments along.
All right, thanks. I think Janine and Bruce's hands were from before, but Cecil, I think.
Yeah, well, I would just move that the leadership of the Housing Advisory Committee draft our comments into a memo and formally submit that to the mayor and the city council, expressing the alarm of the committee.
Was that
I second that.
Okay. Any, so then just briefly, I'll just give us a moment. Is there any discussion on that motion? So the motion on the floor from Cecil being that the committee leadership would, you know, along with maybe a little help from staff taking notes, thank you, put this together in a more formal memo that we would send to the mayor's office and city council. So any discussion on that, questions, concerns before we take a vote on that motion?
This is Lisa Mears. I'm just curious as to the process. Will we as an advisory committee have an opportunity to review the memo before it gets sent?
Katie?
Yeah, I think you could review it, but I don't think you could really, I mean, you can't like vote on it again after this meeting. So by you giving authorization to the co-chairs to do it, that's really sort of at their discretion to draft it and get it sent based on that vote. So, I mean, certainly they could send a draft around ahead of time, but we can't take further action as a committee outside of the committee meeting.
I do think, you know, Lisa, if you wanted to submit like a comment that would have your name, you know, next to it, that might, like, we could maybe agree that people could do that. Go ahead, Cecil.
Yeah, I at the very least would like to see a copy of whatever you submit when you submit it. So I think that would be great to have.
Absolutely. All right. I think unless there's any other questions or concerns, I'm going to ask Katie to go ahead and take the roll.
All right. Karina Bowler.
Yes.
Brunner.
Yes.
Zoe Dodson.
Yes.
Colleen Ebinger. I think Colleen had to leave early. I'm not sure if she's still on. Is Colleen still on?
Yes, Queen is still on, and yes.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I was saying Colleen, but I'll just mark your vote now, Queen. Thanks. Spolinski, J. Cox.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm going to go back. Chloe never joined, right? I'm just going to make sure. Chloe Jackson.
Can you hear me?
Oh, is that Colleen?
Katie, yeah, this is Colleen. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, it just took me a little bit. It's hard to get off mute. Yes, I agree.
Okay.
And I will probably have to drop off shortly. Sorry.
Okay. All right, Charlotte Kinsley.
Yes.
Brenda Marcos.
Yes.
David McGee, I don't think he joined. Lisa Mears.
Yes.
Melissa Newman, I don't think Melissa joined. All right, Colleen O'Connor Toberman,
Yes.
Maggie Oddie,
Yes.
Scott Schaefer,
Yes.
Janine Seja,
Yes.
Cecil Smith,
Yes.
Rose Tang,
Yes.
Annie Wells.
Yes.
All right, there's 16 yeses.
All right, so that motion carries. Leadership will work with staff and get this drafted into a memo that we will circulate with the committee and share with City Council and the Mayor's office. All right, thanks everyone for your feedback. It's really helpful to have all the participation. So next we're going to move to our final and another substantive topic. This is going to be our opportunity to weigh in on the renter eviction protections ordinance. I think Katie, are you going to do the overview presentation first? So Katie's going to give an overview presentation of this ordinance, and then we will have some opportunity to discuss it as a committee, ultimately deciding whether we as a committee want to vote and take any sort of position on this ordinance. It will need to kind of happen. If we are going to take a position, it would need to happen in this month's meeting because the public hearing on this ordinance is set for the May 18th. So if we're going to chime in at all, we'll need to make that decision today. And I'm just kind of noting that so we can be a little bit thoughtful of time. But this is our final agenda item. All right, Katie.
All right, I'm going to share. All right, can you see this? The
Yes.
presentation? All right, I always have a little bit of trouble with this, so hopefully it'll bear with me here. This is going to be a pretty brief overview on the renter eviction protections ordinance. Sorry, it's a mouthful. And then I'm just going to note that I think after I present, Robin may say a few words on behalf of the authors, and Jessica Stone from Regulatory Services is on the call as well. Kelly had to leave the meeting early, but Jess has been working on this as well, so she can help answer questions. Okay, there we go. So this ordinance was introduced and referred to city staff in February of 2021. It was introduced by council members Bender, Gordon, Ellison, and Osman. The introduction, one thing I just wanted to note right off the bat is that the introduction for the ordinance did include a pre-eviction filing notice and just cause. I presented to the POGO committee earlier this month and shared that staff was working on draft ordinances that were very similar to the St. Louis Park pre-eviction filing ordinance and the St. Paul just cause ordinance. Since that time, there was a decision. There's a lawsuit pending in federal court on the St. Paul renter protection ordinance that includes just cause, and there was an injunction on that ordinance, so the city is not able to enforce it right now. And as a result, our city staff have advised that we pause on the just cause piece. Sorry, I'm just gonna mute that line for a moment. That the city pause on the just cause piece at this time. So that is why that is not in this ordinance draft and not part of the presentation today. But the pre-eviction filing notice requirement and the ordinance just builds on previous renter protection work that the city has done. And this committee, or I guess the last committee, but that included many of these of you all, did a lot of work on the Fair Chance Access to Housing, or the renter screening criteria ordinance a couple of years ago. There's the city's renter first policy. So this is continuing to build on a number of new renter protection that the current council has adopted. All right, now I'm running into my issues with this again. Let's see. There we go. Okay, so the ordinance language is attached to the agenda. I should say the draft ordinance language that staff have prepared for the council consideration. It does include a pre-eviction filing notice that says a property owner must provide written notice to a renter at least 14 days before bringing an eviction action for non-payment of rent or other financial obligations. The notice needs to include the total amount due, specifics around whether that includes unpaid rent, late fees, or other charges, and then a name and address of the person authorized to receive rent and fees. It also requires that the property owner share information about legal resources or other sources available to renters to assist with either rental assistance or legal assistance. The notice needs to be delivered in person or by first-class mail. It can also be delivered by email if one of those other two methods is also done. And enforcement would be on a complaint basis and enforced by the city's Regulatory Services Department through the Housing Maintenance Code. So that's the gist of the ordinance. Maybe I'll just wrap up by talking about next steps, and then we can go into a discussion. So there is a public hearing scheduled for May 18th at the Business Inspections, Housing and Zoning Committee of the City Council. Staff is bringing this forward now in anticipation of an end to the eviction moratorium, and that's why we're encouraging. It's been on a relatively quick timeline. And this slide just notes some of the additional eviction prevention supports that the city is working on. One is emergency rental assistance that we just discussed. The other is we have provided funding to legal aid for legal services for eviction prevention. And then just here on this slide, you can see the timeline, May 18th, it goes to biz. There is a link here, and this will be posted to the agenda for the public to see as well. But there's a way to sign up to speak at the public hearing, or you can submit written comments to councilcomment@minneapolismn.gov. If the biz committee moves it forward on the 18th, then it would be considered by the full council on May 28th, and the proposed effective date is June 1st. So that's the overview, and I can take any questions, but I think Robin was going to maybe say a few words as well. So go ahead, Robin.
Well, so you said most of what I would have said. So I think I'll be quiet and people can discuss.
Great, thanks. And Jess, do you have anything to add?
I can just kind of give some context around enforcement. So Kate touched on enforcement being complaint-based. We're basing it off of other enforcement that we've done with other renter protections, like the screening criteria and the security deposit, where our renter housing liaisons are going to take the complaint, do an investigation, talking with the property owner and the renter, kind of go through that process, and then if a violation is found, go through our normal violation process, which is providing a letter of violation, and then we have the authority to do administrative citations, which would then take us to a few other alternative methods, like behavioral patterns, maybe contributing to conditions on a property and things like that. But in speaking with St. Louis Park, this is very much in line with what they are starting to do as well. So that's what we've already been doing, and then it was reassuring that they're also doing the same thing.
Thanks, Katie and Jess, for that. Picking up really quick on the enforcement piece, something that I would just add as legal aid attorney representing folks in evictions is that another way that we would foresee enforcing the tenant's right to this notice would be, representing them if there was an eviction filed in violation of this ordinance, where should it pass, then that would be something that we would bring up in the eviction case as a defense to the eviction, that the proper procedure wasn't filed. So that's not necessarily holding the landlord accountable, but it's enforcing. That would be another method of enforcing the tenant's right to this type of notice. So thanks for all the information about where this is at. I think we want to give as many folks an opportunity to share as possible your thoughts on this policy. One thing that I'll just note too, for a little bit of context, this is obviously a city proposal and not a statewide proposal, but something I'll just share from my experience is that 48 states have some sort of pre-eviction filing notice requirement, and Minnesota does not. So the state of Minnesota does not require a pre-eviction, any sort of affirmative notice to a tenant before filing a court case. So this would be obviously just for the city of Minneapolis, but I just wanted to throw that out there before sharing my own thoughts on the ordinance. So let me, sorry, a little awkward doing this from my phone here. Let's see, I'm not.
Do you want me to help? I think, I thought Cecil raised his hand, although no, I don't see it up anymore. Oh, you're on mute, Cecil.
He's doing the hand hokey pokey.
Yeah.
Yeah, well,
That's okay.
I wanted to give others a chance before I weigh in on this. So I'll let others talk, and then we can talk about jurisdictional issues.
All right.
So
Joey,
this is.
Oh yeah, go ahead,
I'm
Queen.
sorry, I didn't.
No, go ahead, Queen.
This is Queen. So I want to say really quick. It's been my experience that when people are filed upon, this eviction house record goes on their housing record. These evictions go on their housing record, and therefore they are guilty before, found anything. So this is what I think is that when they're filed against, like, you should have the right to be innocent until proven guilty. And I don't really see a lot of that going on when it comes to filing evictions and then trying to get a expungement or a settlement done. It becomes a long drawn out period for people who are renters. I'm a renter myself, so I just want to speak to that a little bit. And I don't see any of that language in there that, once it's filed upon somebody, that kind of follows them around for at least a few years when there's some sort of statute that has been passed in 2017 that says it's only supposed to be on your record for 1 year. So I just want to make sure that if we're moving this type of agenda, that we make it inclusive, that renters, that this is happening to people who are renters, once that eviction is filed. I just wanted to put that out there, and I'm gonna recuse myself, and thank you.
Thanks, Queen. It looks like Robin, you have something, go ahead.
So Queen, thanks for that. I'll just say, from the perspective of the authors, one of the main purposes of this is to prevent renters from having exactly what you're talking about, the unlawful detainer on their record, to give folks an opportunity to avail themselves of emergency rental assistance, to do whatever else they need to do to not have the UD filed. And so the point of the ordinance is that a landlord would not be able to file the UD that stays on somebody's record until after the 14 days of notice have passed. So I absolutely agree that that's a major problem, and it's basically one of the major problems that we're trying to solve. I mean, the evictions, of course, as well, but also that people getting trapped in like a subprime rental market where the only folks they can find to rent to them are folks who allow folks who have had UDs, and it just gets into this spiral of people getting stuck. So that's exactly what we're trying to address.
Robin, can I ask you a quick question off of what Queen said? Unlawful detainers, they can stay on for 3 years, not 1 year. Is that correct, or is it just 1 year? I just want to make sure I know what that timing is.
I can answer that.
Okay.
Yeah, so eviction actions can stay publicly available through the court system's website in perpetuity, indefinitely, and often do. There are still court cases on the public system from the 90s, from the early 2000s. There is a law that says that tenant screening companies cannot report an eviction case after 7 years. Another layer on top of that, the court has sort of their own retention, data retention schedule. And you might also be thinking about the tenant screening ordinance that was passed for the city of Minneapolis when it comes to the age of certain types of evictions, depending on what happened in the case.
That's actually what I'm thinking about. So
yeah,
for the tenant screening, is that 3 years or 1 year? I just can't remember off the top of my head.
I think it's all evictions after 3 years cannot be the sole reason for denial.
Thank you.
It doesn't mean they still exist and they can still be considered in an individualized assessment of someone. They just can't be the sole reason that somebody is denied. So yeah, there's kind of a lot of rules at play. Other comments?
Well,
Go
so
ahead,
let's talk about the jurisdictional issues. It hasn't been challenged in the courts yet, but St. Louis Park has their 7-day notice, and this ordinance does the same kind of thing that St. Louis Park. It's 7 days longer. St. Louis Park is 7 days, not 14. But the enforcement is through the rental license. It's not jurisdictional in the court. The court is administrating Chapter 504B. And how does the city of Minneapolis have jurisdiction in the state court on essentially trying to amend 504B and treat it as a defense to an eviction? And my point is, the city can pass the ordinance, but is it actually effective in state court? You can certainly come after the owner or manager with sanctions against their rental license at a later date, but is it really preventative?
Right. And I think, it's a good question, but I think that there's plenty of examples where, the court doesn't just enforce 504B. I mean, the court is a court of law to decide, all kinds of laws, and they enforce city code on a regular basis. For example, when it comes to like a health and safety repair situation, the court uses, that they can't fine the landlord. That's what the city does, but the court can find that the renter is entitled to some sort of remedy because of a city code violation. So I think, it's premature. We haven't had the court case yet, so we don't know for sure. I can't say for sure what the court would say, but I think when it comes to whether the city has sort of jurisdiction to start entering that space, I think the legal analysis would be under preemption, and whether the state law has so occupied eviction law where nothing else can touch it. One part of that analysis is, can you comply with both? Can a landlord comply with the requirements of 504B, the state law, saying what do you have to do to file an eviction, to go through the eviction process, and at the same time comply with this ordinance? And I would argue you can, because what it does is it is requiring something before that eviction, the state law process even begins. Obviously, we can foresee, it's possible that somebody could challenge that and that the courts would decide. But I also think, I don't know, it depends on right now if we want to debate the policy or whether we think if it were challenged, whether that case would win. I think there's a good argument that and precedent for the courts dealing with stuff like this.
Yeah. So part of my point is it's not changing 504B, which is where the law really needs to be changed if we were going to change it to assure proper jurisdiction. There is the who owns the field, and can the city ordinance be recognized as part of that. That is yet to be proven. I imagine in the Hennepin County housing, the 4th District Housing Court probably will be. But I just think that's we're really enforcing the rental license, not eviction law, when we come to this notice, quit or pay notice ordinance, which is where your enforcement action is. I mean, it's clear by the enforcement action where the sanctions are. Whether somebody could appeal a dismissal of an eviction action and appeal to the district court and appeals court to say, well, I filed it, and I filed it according to the court rules and court procedures. Whether that would, obviously that would have to be argued, and that would be precedent setting once we got the decision. So I just think people need to understand that it's not what everybody thinks it is, or could think it is, I should say, as a because we're really talking about amending 246. 246 or 248?
I think 244.
244. Thank you.
That's okay. That's okay.
It's a long
Robin,
day.
Robin, I see your hand.
So I'll just say, one of the hopes that we always have when we're making policy is that the vast majority of, frankly, whoever the regulation applies to, and in this case it applies to rental property owners, will comply with the ordinance, will comply with the regulation. We do have enforcement mechanisms in place. When someone doesn't have the required railing or whatever, we can send them a letter that says this is something that you need to correct, and I would assume that we would follow that same set of procedures. If someone is filing UDs on their tenants without this kind of proper notice as required by the ordinance, we would say you need to stop that, or we'll start fining you, and then we'll start fining them. If folks can also use it in court as a defense against a UD that is filed without the notice that is required by Minneapolis ordinance, that's sort of like a useful thing on top of the regulation that we would be enacting. So it's sort of an interesting question, but really when it comes right down to it, we're not actually looking to get ourselves embroiled into a lot of that kind of enforcement fighting. We're mostly trying to get folks to change their behavior. And frankly, I think that a lot of rental property owners are already doing this. And so it's not necessarily us saying, here's a brand new behavior for everybody to try. It's saying, this is a best practice. If someone's going to be evicted from their home, and if they're going to have a black mark on their record for a long period of time that's going to make it harder for them to get more housing, there should be communication before that's the thing that's going to happen, to give them a chance, to give that tenant a chance to avail themselves of the resources that are available in this county, to not lose their housing and not end up with that black mark on their record.
This is Karina.
Yeah. Go ahead, Karina.
Okay, so I want to chime in. I want to talk about what we talked about a little earlier about, the right to have counsel for renters. So if a tenant or tenants don't know their rights, they don't know the proper steps, to take to deal with the court or how to deal with a court housing judge or, you know, who to contact. So they get this intimidating letter that say they gotta, you know, move out, but they don't know that they don't have to move out until they see a judge. And so that barrier where, you know, these tenants get these intimidating letters from these property managers and the tenant doesn't know their rights. And then guess what? They see that letter and then they're on the street not knowing they have rights to see a judge first. And so how do we protect that stuff? Because a lot of the stuff that I know that's happening with a lot of renters is intimidating and retaliating. So if I live at a property where a property is a 3-tier property and I'm complaining to every source in Minnesota, and I get finally a letter that's saying that I'm getting evicted for telling the truth, then I don't have the right to counsel because it seems like no one wants to really protect me or the renters. And that's a story that's kind of happening right now. There's a renter that lives in a public housing building, and she did this same fight, and no one would help her. And one man that was on the phone, I won't say his name, he told her that he wouldn't help her if she was the last person on earth. And the sheriff just came 2 days ago and evicted her. She didn't have any right to counsel from anyone to help her other than the people who was helping her. And I feel bad about that. I feel like I didn't have the power to keep her house. She's in a wheelchair. Now she's stranded in our community because her wheelchair is not charged. And all of her belongings is in her unit in the public housing building. So we have to do some thinking like, okay, evictions wrap around now, the kind of situations that we're dealing with housing are coming around with retaliating because tenants are talking. Tenants are getting empowered, they're coming in numbers, and they are discussing what they're dealing with, which is true. But then you have these people who are retaliating against them, these management companies and these owners are coming at the tenants, retaliating, using some form of pressure, getting them evicted, and now they're on the street. So you have to deal with this big old protection layer that's happening around the country right now. And it's, you know, we need some protection. We need some better services that will protect these renters, you know, and educating them on what's going on, who to call, what to do, what to notify, and all of that. Because if a property is a 3-tier property and a community and renters are all complaining, but this landlord is able to evict this tenant, then what? How do we protect that person from not being on the street? So it's a lot going on. And eviction is a big word. And once you're on the street, you're on the street. It's going to be hard to get a place. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks for sharing that. One of the things that I know, just in response to that quickly, that I liked about the ordinance is that part of what's required to be in the notice is information for the renter about getting legal help. And it's something that we see all the time. We meet a lot of our clients for the very first time at court when they're there for their court hearing. And it's not a lot of time to figure out what's going on, what's truly going on behind the scenes, what's going on, and what legally might be at play in the case. So this, I think, would give renters an opportunity to reach out and talk to a lawyer and have the phone number to call before there's, court hearings being scheduled that we know move quickly. So that's something that I like about this, is giving the tenant an opportunity to know what their rights are and the parties an opportunity to get on the same page, at least with what the problem is, before a fast court case gets started. Looking here, Cecil, go ahead. Cecil, I'm not sure if you stepped away, but if you're there, if you want to go ahead and unmute yourself.
I'm having a wonderful conversation by myself. I wanted to just circle back and certainly agree with Robin that communication is always the best practice. And given the filing fees in Minnesota, that's a very significant deterrent to filing an eviction, because obviously helping a resident find rental assistance when there's a non-payment situation is much in the interests of both parties. So that's also part of best practices. And but the problem with the 14 days, that's not best practices, because what the city is proposing here in terms of 14 days creates a much more adversarial relationship, because now, given looking at court calendars, at least pre-pandemic, it was 10 to 14 days after filing before there was a court date scheduled. And typically the resident is granted 7 days to either come up with the rent, or otherwise there's a negotiated settlement agreement, or the writ is issued. So when you add that on top of the 14 days, now we're into the next month. So my fear is the best practice is going to become that second, third, fourth, maybe fifth of the month, all of these notices start going out. And as Karina pointed out, getting the big scary letter from the property manager, which is a very formal legal document, which, as Joey pointed out, is one of the things that legal aid will use in the courts to say this wasn't properly presented eviction filing because there wasn't the proper notice. That escalates the situation. And because you take the 5th of the month plus the 14 plus the 10 days filing plus the 7 days, and now not only is whatever rent was missing up to that point, but there's another month that has gone by. And so again, owners are going to act fairly reasonably, that you want to mitigate your losses and not lose more money. And so providing the notice early is the right thing to do, because there's the potential for further losses. And I just think these notices are scary. They escalate. Owners don't like sending them out because they're not very friendly. We like to have friendly relationships. We like to problem solve because that's in everybody's best interest. And so I just fear what it does to our market. It just becomes much more antagonistic than it already is in the minds of some people.
Right, I'm not seeing other hands right now. But if anyone else wants to join in the discussion, either raise your hand or just unmute yourself. I'd be curious to hear from others, how you think, especially those who work with renters in finding services, in locating the services that they need, or in other capacities, how you think a policy like this would impact people in your communities or people that you serve. Looks like Rob is on the line. Did you want to join in? I know. Oh, there you are.
I do.
Can you just remind the committee, for folks who might not know remember who you are, can you just remind folks who you are?
Absolutely. My name is Robert Sayers. I work in regulatory services. I work through fire inspection services, but I play the role of a rental housing liaison. And I just want to remind folks that the things that we get involved in are like those retaliatory in nature incidents, in an attempt to see if we can mitigate something that's good for everyone's sake, before having to step into the long drawn out processes as well, right? And we really put a lot of emphasis on building relationships, right? And creating scenarios that are healthy both for the landlords as well as the residents. So I just want to remind folks that we're here. Please utilize us. I think we're about to enter into a space where we're all going to be swamped with work, regardless of where we fall on that spectrum. But we are here, and we come to this work with a lot of culturally specific lenses as well as social justice lens. and yeah, please utilize us. We fight hard for renters' rights, and we don't shy away from that. That is our position and what we do. We also know the importance of having landlords that are healthy landlords. And a lot of our work is about how we hold those folks accountable without re-victimizing people that are already being victimized. So just a reminder, we're out here. Please utilize us regardless of where you're from. If you come across these things in nature, to let us know. They are things that we're taking great care to peel back the layers and get down to, some good conversations and some change. So that's all.
Awesome. Thanks, Rob. And the
Put my
reminder of the,
contact information in the chat as well.
oh, great. Yeah, that's really helpful. Thanks for the reminder about the sunshine and blue skies out there too. All right.
Hey, Joey, I just wanted to say hello to Robert. I never heard your voice before, but we are in communication, and I would like to have you get back into communication with us about what we were previously working on.
I would love that, sis. We will absolutely connect. All right.
Okay. Thank you.
Great. All right. Other folks have comments? We've got about 14 minutes left for discussion and making any decision about taking a position as a committee.
Well, Joey, I would just say this, that I am serious about calling a state of emergency for Minneapolis. With, these moratoriums ending, we need to really protect our renters, considering that we do have a lot of renters and very little time to help protect some of these renters with the issues that will occur. I agree with a lot that was said today. But we still got a lot of work to do. And I want to be able to, I always leave with these phone calls feeling like we're helping someone and that we gave somebody some hope, which I would love these calls to always have a lot of renters on, because a lot of people don't know that we having these meetings. So I don't know if it'd be helpful for Andrea to get someone to get, postcards sent out letting people know that these meetings are happening. Because a lot of these meetings are very important that happen within the city. And so we want to make sure that people are engaging in these meetings and being able to speak for what they are having, problems with. So, but I just wanted to state that I think it's very important that we call some sort of real concrete plan to help these evictions that are coming, these mass tsunami evictions that are coming, and protect our renters and our vulnerable renters and the renters that are dealing with mental illness, and protect, our unsheltered community that's on the streets. Like, we really need to really be trying to figure out these concrete, real action plans. And so I'll end it there.
Thanks, Karina. All right, Colleen, go ahead.
Thanks. I'm just wondering if the committee wants to take a vote on whether or not we want to name our support for this eviction ordinance. I hear the comments about these letters being scary sometimes, but it seems like the alternative we have now is that renters are getting less information. And so, weigh that. Like, do you want people to have notice that might feel intimidating, that might feel adversarial, that might feel kind of formal? Or do you want people to not have notice, not have, the name of an attorney to call, not have information about rental assistance? I don't see how that's the route we want to go. So I'd like to make a motion that the committee make a note of support for this before the public hearing.
Thanks, Colleen. Is there a second to that motion?
This is Charlotte. I would second that.
All right, so I think this would be the opportunity for any final discussion on that motion before we take a vote. I will just say for myself and on behalf of legal aid, I would kind of picking up on what Colleen just said, if the pre-filing notice is adversarial, well then certainly getting a summons and complaint for a court case is adversarial, and nothing in this notice requires a landlord to file an eviction on day 15 or when after the notice period. It's a notice with the opportunity of giving the renter an opportunity to access resources, the renter and the landlord an opportunity to talk to see if maybe they can resolve the issue out of court, whether that's by solving the problem or even reaching some sort of agreement outside of court. I just would say that, we think that it's Minnesota, as I think Cecil mentioned, we also think that this should be state policy and have been working on that at the state legislature. But I think this is an opportunity for Minneapolis to do the right thing and to stand up for a pretty basic measure for renters that will help, especially in this year where once the moratorium is fully lifted, we're not sure what we'll see, but we could see a lot of folks with really unstable situations. And we might as well make sure everyone has the information they need and that the parties are on the same page before kicking it up to a court case. Any other final discussion before we take a vote on the motion?
I'm just struck with the disconnect between the first set of discussions we had and the second. And, if there's people that are 3, 6, 9, 12 months behind and they know it, and we haven't either they haven't accessed the money that's available, or we haven't created the system where they can access it. It's a system failure. And we're trying to put a Band-Aid on the backside by saying, 2 more weeks or something. So that's the part that I have the greatest concern. I literally had to carry one of my tenants through this entire process last fall, and it took 5 months. So, 2 weeks of addition. I don't disagree with, putting the notification out there. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying the disconnect, the chasm that we're talking about is so big between the tenants getting the help. Just it's mind-boggling to me that we talk about stopping evictions, but we don't talk about how to make it so the rent's paid. We never have that discussion, right? It's all about how to stop the eviction because 90% of them are, payment pieces. So I just wanted to add that I agree about notification. I would do that for any of my tenants, but we're kind of missing the whole point, I think. So call the governor. It's a crisis, right? Get this money in people's hands so they don't get evicted. Don't gerrymander the eviction timing so it just takes a little longer. We got to solve it so these people aren't put on the street. So thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Bruce.
Yeah, Bruce, I call the governor, and I call him the man who never answers. So he never respond to emails or my calls. I just always talk to his aide. So I just feel like at this point, I don't feel like they care anyway. It looks good on paper, but I don't feel like they care. So I do call the governor.
All right, any final thoughts that folks want to share before we vote on the motion at hand? Go ahead. You're muted.
Just a procedural question. As in the past, any opposition, would they be offered the opportunity to write a minority report to the council?
Yeah, I know we did that in the past for another ordinance that we took a position on. The motion here is pretty simple. It's, does the committee support it or not? So I'm not sure if those who vote in favor, if whoever votes in favor of the prevailing side of the motion isn't writing like a narrative of why. I'm not sure it makes a lot of sense to only have the narrative of the minority of their reasoning, depending on which way it goes.
That's fine. If that's all that's going to be done, I just ask that the vote be recorded.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think we've done that in the past for all of our, when we've shared the positions, we've said how many votes went which way. So I think that since we're not taking like a more we're doing this as more of a green light, thumbs up or thumbs down type of vote, that'd be maybe what I would say for this one.
Very good. Thank you.
Yeah, no, good question though. All right. Not seeing anything else. I think, Katie, if you want to go ahead. Rose. Rose, go ahead.
Rose.
Sorry, just a quick clarification. So we're just voting right now, not as to whether or not we're going to put together a statement for the 18th. Is that correct?
Right. We're just, the motion on the table is just the motion. Colleen moved that, we take a position saying we urge the council to support this ordinance.
Okay, and so that would be submitted to to Biz on the 18th.
Yeah, so we would
Okay.
share that, but we just wouldn't share anything more than that, other than, this was the vote on that motion.
Okay, thank you. Sorry.
No, that's fine. All right, Katie, I think if you think we're ready, go ahead.
All right, I will take the roll. Karina Bowler.
Yes.
Bruce Brunner.
Yes.
Joey Dobson.
Yes.
I think Colleen had to leave, but Colleen Ebinger. Spelinski J. Cox.
Yes.
Queen Kimmons.
Yes.
Charlotte Kinsley.
Yes.
Brenda Marcos. Brenda still here?
Yes.
You're still here, and is that a yes vote? Just confirming.
Yes, it's a yes
Okay.
vote, yes.
Thank you. All right. I think Lisa had to leave, I believe. Lisa Mears. Colleen O'Connor Toberman.
Yes.
Maggie Oddie.
Yes.
Scott Schaefer.
Yes.
Janine Sija.
Yes.
Cecil Smith.
No.
Rose Tang.
Yes.
Annie Wells.
Yes.
Okay, there are, well, let me make sure. I didn't miss anyone, did I? If you're on the committee and didn't hear your name, I think we got everyone. Okay, so there are 15 ayes and 15 yeses and 1 no.
Okay, thanks for taking that vote, Katie. And as we said, we will share that vote with the committee before the May 18th public hearing. All right, it's 4:58. I feel like we got a lot done today. We had a lot of really good conversation. Thanks everybody for participating and for sticking around. Anything final that we've missed that we need to cover? All right. Thanks, everyone. I hope you have a good rest of your week, and we will see you in June. Okay, bye-bye.
Thank you.